You are now listening to the Minority Trailblazer podcast. Let the story begin.
One time for the lovers, 2 times for the ladies, 3 times for the brothers, 4 times for the babies. Do you love her? 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 1 time for the lovers, 2 times for the ladies, 3 times for the brothers, 4 times for the babies. Do you love her? 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 Brown skin, love her. Brown skin, love her. Brown. Brown skin, love her. Brown skin, love her. Brown. She my brown skin, love her. Brown skin, love her. Brown. She my brown skin, love her. Brown skin. Hold me down.
Welcome to the Minority Trailblazer podcast, and I'm your host, Greg Ehill, the culture change agent. On this show, we interview young, successful minorities in a variety of fields to educate, empower, and inspire our current and future generation of leaders. And today, I got the privilege to have a legend on the podcast, man. It's been years, literally years in the making. And I just love the way the energy happens where, we got true people that even though you don't talk to all the time, true friends that, whenever they're ready, is ready. Like, you feel me though? Like, we supposed to do this years ago, right? And crazy. See, before we do a typical introduction, like, how do we connect?
I think Instagram.
And cause how did you even learn about the podcast?
I found it. Just stumbling on, Apple, iTunes, just trying to figure out, some podcasts to add to the wardrobe.
And this
materials, and that was
2016, 2015, 2014?
2014.
Yeah.
Really. It was early.
It's crazy. Like, it's 2020 and it's just crazy how you can really actualize, online relationships, right?
That's right.
That's what really, that's the thing in the essence of online though, that's what it's really supposed to be.
Right.
Where if you, like, we started, I don't know, when did the trend become we added friends arbitrarily?
Right. It's funny because my whole concept of social media was to build meaningful connections, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, when I see people that are like-minded, I don't just want to follow you online, right? Like, I really want to get to know you, right? Yeah. So, this is a full circle moment because I remember even before reaching out to you, I would listen to the podcast and I'm like, one day I want to be on this podcast. Mm-hmm. And then I reached out to you and I was like, trying to figure out how you select your interviewees and here we are. So it's like, it's a full circle moment. I'm the privileged one. Here today, you know?
And it's great, man, because it's this whole circle. I've been in Charlotte. Khalil, we connected the same way via Instagram and we're fraternity brothers. I didn't even know he was in our fraternity and all that. And then I have an OG and it's like, it's just really good to see at this level as people continue to grow. But also too, I've realized this year with everything that's going on, good, bad, and downright ugly and disgusting, the importance of utilizing the relationships you have. Cause if you're not utilizing, what's the point of them?
That's right.
I mean, it's sad, but literally, if you go on your phone, I tell people I had to go through this exercise. Mm-hmm. If you got to go through your phone, these contacts that people you've never contacted in these years, should they even be on your phone?
That's right.
Like, and if the people that you talk to all the time, and not just everything that has to be a business in exchange, but even a life exchange, are they adding, like, not even adding value, like technical, but like, what are we doing?
Right. That's key. I mean, I think that's a key element is that, and you said not add value, but for me it is, how are you going to add value, right? Because I think time is our most valuable asset. So if we're investing it with people that, are not going to help us advance in our lives, then, is that a friendship of substance that you want to invest your time into?
So in regards to that, let's start the podcast like we usually, man. Can you share with our audience a quote or a mantra you live by and then share with us a story about how you applied that within the last month or so?
Oh my goodness. So a go-to quote for me, is forward always. And that came from, Luke Cage. So, in my house.
Like Mortal Kombat Luke Cage?
Well,
or
Marvel,
Netflix.
So,
Luke Cage. Yeah.
So, and that was just we're a Marvel family. And, so I started watching that and that whole quote just stood with me. And really it's just, no matter what, you've got to move forward. Right. And I think just looking at how things are going right now in our country, right? The best example of that is just being able to get up every day and keep moving forward, right? In a time where there's so much going on, right? There's so many things that can distract you. There's so many things that can, have an emotional toll on you, right? So I think it's critical that you keep that mindset of, I've got to keep it moving forward, right? And so anytime I'm feeling like I'm getting in a slump or I'm like, gosh, what else could happen, right? I'm like, okay, you've got to move forward. So simple, straight to the point, but something that I definitely have applied, most recently, just trying to navigate, under this administration, under, things that are going on in the world. So it's been helpful to me.
Yeah. Even this podcast, yesterday I know, and I'm always conscious about talking about death because, there's a lot of people that die all the time.
Right.
Celebrity, non-celebrity, people that we'll know, people that we'll never know about.
Right.
But there is an extra emphasis in a worldly context with people that mean a lot for the culture. Like, just last night I get the news. I'm like, Chadwick Bob. I'm like, bro, I was at the crib. I'm like,
that crushed me. It was, I think everybody just, you had a moment of pause and it was shock because all I could think was, from what I was reading, he was diagnosed years ago.
Yeah.
So you did all of this filming with that, and it's a perfect example of what I hope we all can strive to model in our lives is that, he pushed forward, he didn't let anyone see that he was ill, right? And it's just a testament to what's possible. So hopefully, it's sad, but the legacy lives on, right? And the impact that he has had on so many lives, it lives on.
Yeah, it's a true definition of a king and on a couple different aspects. One, like I said, regardless of what he was going through, he shouldered on. And then two, he had a strong support group that nobody ever knew.
Right.
Like, you can't be a king if it's a monolith, it's a dictatorship. If nobody said nothing, there was no rumors that we were aware of.
Yeah.
So for him to operate on that level, under the pressure of these roles he's been, unfortunately, he was like the go-to black guy on every role from Thurgood Marshall to freaking Jackie Robinson.
Yes. James Brown.
Like,
that to me, I'm like, man, to be able to,
James, these are, like, he was the go-to guy. And then that's why, to be honest, that's why it gets kind of sick and cynical. You're like, hold up. A guy that really was on this level for black people in so many different roles.
Right.
And then to top it off with Wakanda for the kids, for the culture, all that black excellence in Wakanda and y'all gonna take that away?
Yes. That is the hit I think we're all feeling. It's like, why? You can't, I can't wrap my head around that. Like the momentum that it caused in the industry, the new norms, and everybody got behind it. Everybody. Yes.
Black, white, whatever. It was a phenomenal movie and concept, and he really was it.
Oh, he was.
And then now it's like, what? Yeah. It just still, it's hard to compute. But that's the layerness of honestly being black in America. Cause that's trauma that we all respect it, but we don't know him. But then we have people in our family, in our lives that, and not died on their own merit. People that died unmeritedly. And then sometimes we have people in our family that have caused people to die unmeritedly. And you're consistently living in that matrix because then sometimes you get deeper with systematic. It's a lot to it.
Oh, it's heavy.
And then we still record the next day, give great content. And then continue to try to achieve in business. You're an entrepreneur. So and you run another company and it's just show up.
Yeah.
And you're on calls with people that are unaware of none of this.
Right.
My Wi-Fi is going on, so please, cause somebody, I'm like, yo, you talking about Wi-Fi? I be on call. I know you be on calls
oh man. Yeah, the emotional trauma, and this is, we've seen a lot of this, but, in the black community especially, after years of being oppressed, the emotional trauma is real. And the ability to go into our workplaces, right, and try to mask that, right, because you still have to be productive, you still have to, and so I think, some companies are trying to put an effort in, maybe you're working from home and they're giving you some mental health days or, so there are some organizations and then there are some that are like business as usual, right? It's the same approach to how, folks have approached coronavirus, right? It's just, we've got to keep it moving. And it speaks to, our country and what's most important to the country. But, as a community, I think, we have to deal with, where we are soul wise, right? And make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because that's going to impact everything. So that's a critical piece that I think we've got to give attention to.
And the duality, which I'm excited to explore doing this show right here, which makes it very unique to us, because then there's an added level of you specifically being in the LGBTQ plus community, where it's like there's another level. You feel me? Because then it's like you keep peeling, and there's a lot with that as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited, because honestly, I think outside of Seth, I think you're really the only openly one that I probably have interviewed, but we didn't discuss that or talk that over on the show. And it's not by design. It just happenstance and whatnot. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm excited to kind of, touch and break new ground, because I mean, in the end of the day, we just there's so much, and I hate to always be on the trauma trope, but there's so much trauma and healing on every aspect
That's true.
It's so much.
It is.
But let's start it off like this. Can you give us one word to describe this week in general, and why you chose to kind of use that word? And we call this section Find the Post, because we always want to make sure, me as a host, I want to make sure I'm aware of where I'm entering conversations, because I've been back in my young days, I'm hype, whatever, and then I realized it was a conversation with somebody that has passed last week. Yeah. So not to say you change your whole script, but you have to acquiesce. So I said, going forward, I'm not going to be caught like this. I'm like, and they like, yeah, and then I'm like, damn, I'm insensitive. Like, you feel me? So yeah, give us a word, describe the week, and why you chose that word.
This week, the first thing that came to mind was productive, honestly. We'll talk a little bit about it, but I'm, in a different role now. So it's, and I'm excited about it. And so, a lot of the time is, making sure that I have a strategy and a system and processes that are going to allow me to be successful. And so this week, having an opportunity to, spend some time in Phoenix working with the team, and then come back and have a few days to decompress and, to really study the last few weeks and the interactions with colleagues. It just felt like a good, productive week. And then, when I got to Friday, I'm like, okay, I was able to just relax and enjoy, everything seems to be going in the right direction. And I, personally am just trying to make sure that I show up the best I can, to make sure that it's as productive as possible. So I'm pleased with this week. I think it was productive would be my descriptor.
And you got the new toy this week too. Like, you got the new kit. Like, what's up? Like, why you pull the trigger? I said, you shooting from half court, bro. Like, what's
Greg? Listen, it's funny because, 2008, my wife she rented a C300.
Yeah.
Dropped it off. I was interning at Creative Loafing.
Creative Loafing. I love
right,
that.
Right.
Creative Loafing.
So I was interning there, and she called and she said, come outside. There's a car out here for you, right? And so I'm coming out, I'm like, and it was that car. And I had been talking about it, my parents were talking, I had been talking about it for years. This is the car I want. And I can't even remember why it was the car, but everyone said, you've been talking about that for years. So when she rented the car, we drove uptown. And, cause you got to do that, right?
Yeah.
Driving uptown, and like we went to go eat uptown, and I was, the whole time I'm just like envisioning what it's going to be like when I have this car, right? So fast forward, 12 years. And, the opportunity presented itself, everything aligned, we, made the right steps to prepare for it. And we went and, and bought the car, black on black, which was key. I was like, I went to several dealerships. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It has to be black on black, so we were excited about that. And, 7 miles, on the car, and drove it off. And, now I'm feeling like, it still hasn't set in that I got the car, but it's here.
How does it feel when you start to actualize some things that in your life, not to say you thought were unachievable rather, but more so you finally get it? Like, okay, you got a house. Okay, I really have a house. Okay, your business, you hit a certain level of income. Like, whoa, we really do hit.
Right.
And especially for some, and I don't know, and we'll get into your backstory, but if you're not used to that, and it's like, hold up, this is really real for real?
Yeah.
Like, how do you cope with that?
Oh, it is, for me, when I have something that I'm envisioning for myself, I'm speaking it into existence. No matter what the circumstances are, I'm speaking it into existence. And so, as you start doing that, you try to create, the environment to attract what you're seeking, right? And so the biggest thing was seeing it manifest and then saying, okay, what's next? That's my thing, right? It's not that it surprises me that it manifests because I believe it, before I even receive it, right? And so that piece isn't it. It's now that I have it, I have trouble being content with it, right? Because now I'm like, okay, well, what's next? What am I, and so
you got the C3, but there's other additions, the other kits.
Right. And it's funny you said that because, after I bought the car, we went to eat and, we were celebrating and stuff. And then I was like, that S-Class is real, and so you just, and I'm like, Ciara, just be content.
You ain't even got 100 miles on the pedometer. Yeah, you talk about the S.
And so that's the piece that I think is the biggest challenge for me is learning to be content. You wanted this, God made it so that you have it. Be grateful for it, right? Don't move on to the next so quickly, right? And that's a big thing because overall I'm just such a driven person. So I'm always, raise the bar, right? And sometimes you just have to be content and say, God, look how far I've come from not even having a car for so long, to now being able to get the car that I've wanted all these years. So, I think it's just an exercise for me in how do you remain driven, but be content. With what you have.
So let's go ahead and jump right in, man. Can you give our audience, man, a little context of, man, kind of who you are and then kind of walk us through, your business journey?
Yeah. So I'm a Greensboro native.
336.
Yeah. So I broke the mold. I didn't go to A&T. A lot of my family went to A&T. I ended up going to Gardner-Webb for 2 years.
Okay.
Went on an academic scholarship. My intentions were to go into ministry. So I got to Gardner-Webb, small town, and I said, I want something more, right? I feel like there's something else. At that time I was thinking I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to live that,
big city.
I was going to do it. I was like, I want this metropolitan, feel. I want to, work with SM Magazine or maybe a Black enterprise. I had that kind of, thought. And so, Gardner-Webb just wasn't it. I felt like, I had maximized everything I could do in Bowling Springs, right? So a friend of mine said, let's look at going to UNC Charlotte. Let's transfer to UNC Charlotte. So I said, I don't think I'm going to get in, and I'm thinking, when you look at UNC Charlotte, you're thinking it's this, prestigious school in comparison to what Gardner-Webb was, right? Because we were traveling there.
I ain't never put UNC Charlotte on that map, but I mean, maybe.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking it's so much different than what Gardner-Webb is, right? So I'm thinking it's got to be hard to get into. Everybody wants to, go to UNC Charlotte. And so I'm like, I'm doubting myself. Am I going to get in? So we did it. And, the stars aligned, got accepted. So I moved to Charlotte in 2007. And that was a game changer for me coming to Charlotte. At the time I had switched majors. So I was, pursuing English and journalism. And my goal was to, explore all the elements of journalism. So, I was fortunate to be able to write for Creative Loafing, Q City Metro, several publications. Even in high school, writing for Greensboro News and Record kind of helped me get my feet
shout out to Greensboro News and Record.
Right? Absolutely. They definitely gave me my first little taste of what journalism was, through a summer program that they had for, minorities in the community. And so, that was my focus. I'm going to pursue journalism. And so I started interning all around Charlotte. I had an opportunity to intern with a PR firm, JSW Media Group, who the owner of that company became a mentor of mine, helped to really connect me to other people in Charlotte, realized public relations wasn't where I wanted to go. And then, with journalism, I said, well, I think there's something more. Right. And so, I get to UNC Charlotte, I'm interning, I'm doing all this. And I knew that I didn't want to go into journalism after I graduated. I said, there's gotta be, there's something else. And I wasn't sure what it was. And so 2009, I graduated from undergrad. And I'm like, okay, what's next? Right. Because again, timing, we've got the recession that we're coming out of, right? So you're trying to sort through it and you're like, God, I did everything that I was told to do. Go to school, get the degree. Now what, right? And so 2009, I just like, I'm trying to find my way. I ended up working with a law firm out of Matthews. And I was responsible for their marketing. Right. And so this was my first taste of, being independent and being out in the world. Right. And it changed the game for me because I saw, I was able to work with different people. I was able to grow and develop. And it really helped me to build on, the experience I had to go elsewhere. So 2009, working there. And then my mom had, open heart surgery.
Oh man.
She had open heart surgery, her second open heart surgery. And the demands of that job were so intense that, when my mom was having surgery, they wanted me to be on calls. They wanted me, and I was like, there's gotta be something better than this. If I have to choose, I'm going to prioritize family, right? So I ended up, resigning from that position, to be there to help support my family through that time. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, well now I don't have income.
Yeah. Support a family.
Right.
Shit, I quit. Now you gonna be supporting me.
Right. And I'm like, this isn't adding up. And so what I did is I said, okay, well, look at everything that you've done. You've been interning. You've worked in this role. So you've got some lead generation and, search engine optimization skills. What can you do to kind of put it all together? Right. And so what the focus was then, Lilly Pad and Pen. We created a business. That was my first business. It was, to help.
And what year was this?
This was 2010.
Okay.
2010. Yep. Yeah. So we, I took everything I had done, resume writing, copy editing, and put it under one company. And we were going to help emerging small businesses and career transitioning professionals, right? I'm like, okay, I'm just going to try it, see what happens, right? So we start that, and we're going slowly, but surely, right? And then what I realized is that everyone that was coming to us for our services, were unemployed. Right? So now you got this dynamic of like, okay, they really need this resume, right? But they can't pay for the resume, right? So there's this dynamic, right? Where you're like, wait a minute, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You can't turn them away.
Yeah.
But right now I don't have a business because I'm not making anything. Right? I'm actually, and it's funny now because it's like, I was paying, like the overhead to run the business and I wasn't making anything, right?
Yeah.
And still,
your heart was in the right place, though.
Heart was in the right place, and it's funny because even with that, the little bit that we were bringing in, I was like, we were trying to be charitable. So, 50% of our proceeds went to nonprofits, right?
50?
Greg, I was like, listen. I'm sowing all the seeds. I'm like, let me just, I'm sowing, right? Sowing to my own detriment, but but
at some point they'll grow, but hey, in the season,
it took a long time. Duke Energy, the rent, none of that wanted to hear about the harvest is coming. They're like, you got to pay the bill, right? So that was the thing. That was the dynamic for us. That was the dynamic. And so, I said, okay, we got to figure something else out. So I thought, well, why can't we take this and make it a nonprofit? So we transitioned from, Lilly Pad and Pen into what became the Resurrect Love Project. We took the, what Lilly Pad and Pen was, and we put it under a program under the Resurrect Love Project that was called Higher Ground. Right. And then we had, it all kind of came together. And so we put that there and we started to, the goal was to ignite a global love movement through acts of community centered service. So we went to nonprofits in the area and we tried to fill their gaps. Right. We worked with families during the holidays, to sponsor their Christmas, to sponsor their Thanksgiving. Right. And the whole idea was that I really felt that we were in a time where people needed to understand that service was synonymous with love, right? So if you can serve someone, it breaks down those barriers, right? So if I'm helping a family and I'm equipping them with, their Christmas gifts, they don't look at me and say, oh, I don't want it because, Ciara's black or, Ciara's LGBT or whatever, right? At that moment, it breaks down all the barriers, right? Because they can see that there's love there, right? And so I just felt like that was such a powerful thing. And so we started the Resurrect Love Project. And then the goal was, okay, well, you hear people talk about nonprofits and grants and they're not readily available, right? They take time. So.
And then once you get in and build a relationship, then it's like, it's just the faucet for some, just keep going. But to get there,
Yes.
Most people don't get there.
Yes. Yes. And it takes time, and you've got to have some kind of safety net, right, to ensure that you don't go under while you're waiting for those grants to come. So I'm still back in the same position, and I'm like, okay, what's going on, right? And so I said, all right, at this point, I need to go back out. I need to find a job, right? And the thought was I could work a job, but I could, put the capital into the Red Circle project, right? So that's 2012. 2012, I said, okay, we gotta figure this out, right? So I went online. And I'm searching for jobs, and I preface this to say, that Craigslist back in 2012 wasn't what Craigslist is today.
Oh yeah, you can find some. I found my first couple jobs on Craigslist, like for real.
But people, I say Craigslist, and people are like, oh no, but it wasn't what it was. So Craigslist, I go on Craigslist, I find this ad for a position that had marketing associate. And then, I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, this sounds like something that I want to explore. Fast forward, I go in and I'm interviewing, go through a series of interviews, and it led me.
You can close down the messages after something. Just, it's quit it. Force quit. It led me to environmental service systems, and so environmental service systems is where I've been for the last 8 years. Okay. And my role within the company, was business development. Okay. So what it allowed me to do was, to really help grow that entrepreneurial spirit. It gave me ownership of growing the company, right? But it also gave me still that I could then take, some of those resources and fund some of my own passions, right? And then of course it helped me to develop in areas that, I was weak in, right? And so. And what type of areas were you weak in?
Public speaking.
Yeah.
Public speaking, no doubt. I remember when I was interviewing for the position, and, the president of the company said, are you comfortable public speaking, with public speaking? And I, in my mind, I'm like, absolutely no. Yeah. No way. And, but it's one of those things, you sink or swim, right? Yeah. So I'm like, absolutely, I'm good, and I remember walking out, right? Walking out of that interview, and I'm talking to myself like, why would you do it? And you fast forward to when I started, one of our first presentations, was, in a room with, a large table, and you've got 15 people that's watching you present, right? And I remember I'm sweating, my voice is cracking, my hands are shaking, it's no doubt that I'm not comfortable, right?
I am not okay.
Right. So, but, it gave me an opportunity through practice to be able to develop that skill set. And over time, it got better. I don't think you ever get away from having some nervousness, right? But I learned how to be in control of it.
When you're not nervous at all, then it's like, do you care?
Right.
Are you on that level? I mean, unless. Yeah. Nah. And break down for our audience what ESS is.
Yeah. So, Environmental Service Systems is a national facility maintenance company. Okay. Based here in Charlotte. So the company was started in 1998 by industry veteran who decided that he wanted to go out and start his own business. So we started primarily providing cleaning services, and then over the years, as we've grown with our customer base, we now added on some services like your landscaping, your HVAC maintenance, your light bulb maintenance, several services that have to do with the upkeep of a facility, and specifically commercial facilities, right? So that's where, again, it was a new industry for me. Had no clue, honestly, I was surprised coming into it because, millennials, when you think about millennials, we don't think about going to work with cleaning companies right away, right? You don't make that connection. And so there was a little bit of a rub there. I'm like, is this really where, I'm going to be long term, right? But,
it ain't sexy. It's not consulting where you not essentially, if you're looking from a layman's term, it's like, hold up.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah. Cleaning? Like, hey, what do you do? Well, I work for Essential ESS. Okay, what do y'all do? Yeah. We clean.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. It's and people don't realize that, it's a recession-proof industry. It's a $65 billion industry, right? So in times like this where we have a pandemic on our hands, this industry isn't impacted like, some of the others are, right? And so, looking at it when I came, I'm like, this isn't what I thought. This wasn't the sexy thing. Like you said, it wasn't the sexy thing that I thought I'd be doing. But, I got in there and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the company, the people, And it made my job easier because I believed so strongly in the company that I could sell it in a way that was believable. I didn't have to, I didn't have to put my integrity on the line to sell. It was like, no, I believe in this and I know this is going to be a good service for the clients that we support. So, it was a happy marriage. And so, 8 years later and, here we are.
And let's jump in and we're going to get for our audience. We just paint the picture and I'm getting a lot of stuff from it. Yeah. But let's talk through your cleaning network. Let's talk through your entrepreneurship there because a lot of these ventures, it started off as entrepreneurship and then it rolled into actual positions and salary making positions, which is important for entrepreneurs out there. I know everybody want to jump off the boat and start your own business. Right. But then you cash strap. Right. You feel me? So you can get it both ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's some struggles that most people don't share with doing it just the raw amount that most of y'all ain't built for, to be honest. Most of us ain't built for it. Shoot, nobody's really built for certain struggles of entrepreneurship. Especially a black entrepreneur.
Oh yeah.
But you don't have there's no saving grace.
Absolutely.
There's no loans, no aunties, no family and friends.
Yeah, you're pulling it from the mud.
So walk us through, the auspice of this cleaning network and the formation of it and kind of where it stands today.
Yeah. So, a couple years ago, the president of, Environmental Service Systems approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea. I'm looking at the tech space. We were both kind of looking at it and he said, I think there's a need in our industry, for a resource, to help cleaning companies find talent." Right. And, to kind of preface it in the cleaning industry, the turnover rate is 200%.
Oh, how do you do 200%? Like, what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like,
so, you're essentially, turning over, so many of your employees in a year because, the reality is these positions aren't your high paying jobs.
Yeah.
And when you can go work at Amazon, even if it's in the distribution center,
that's
Amazon
15, 16.
Right.
Even though they work you like whatever. They got you in that little biometric boy.
Yeah. And so people will easily leave, to make more. And we understand it, right? We've got to be honest about the cost of living, right?
They'll quit within a day. They'll work a week and stop. You calling them where they at. They answer the phone nature of the game.
That's it. So, we wanted to bring a solution to market that would help with that. Specifically help you find quality talent in the cleaning industry. So, we started meeting every Saturday, in a conference room, with the Post-its on the wall, fleshing out the idea. And, we launched in 2018. With the intent of, really trying to bring a solution to market that, we knew was needed, right? And so now, fast forward a little bit here, we've got a team in place, we've got, support that's kind of helping us get it where it needs to go. And the idea is to, create a platform similar to, what you would expect with any kind of recruiting platform, where, cleaning professionals can now set up a profile, to really hold themselves in high esteem, right?
Yeah.
You get to market yourself in a way that's very different than what you would do on a LinkedIn or a Career Builder or any other tool, right? Because it's customized for our industry, right? And then we bring the cleaning companies that are looking for, cleaning staff, not just cleaning staff, but your sales and marketing. You may be looking for management, right? For your team, we bring them in and they can search on our platform for exactly what they need, right? So if they're looking for a full-time day porter in Charlotte, North Carolina, they can get really detailed as to what, their search, right, their search specifications are. And then, they're connected with those that are in our membership database, right? And so we make that connection with the intent that, they'll engage, they'll interview, and then the success story is that person gets hired, right? And so, it's been exciting for us. We're now that we've launched and we're still, fine tuning things. But I think the market has received us well.
Yeah.
And now it's just, how do we take it each day? We're thinking, okay, how do we take it to that next level? Right. But it definitely, for me personally, One, being able to, create a business with a mentor of mine.
Yeah.
Someone who I respect and hold in high esteem, was one thing, right? That's a remarkable piece of it. But then two, it helped me to grow entrepreneurially, right? Because what I realized is that I flourished when I had a partner.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to do it all on my own, right? And so a little bit of the pride and the ego had to go away because it doesn't have to be, because I had so many other entrepreneurial ventures where I felt like I was the person, right? And if I didn't succeed, right, then it was all on me, right? And in a way, I felt comfortable with that, right? Because I had control, or at least I thought I did. I thought I had control.
Control over a sinking ship ain't control.
Right. It's not.
Not saying it was a sinking ship, but it's in general stuff that's going down.
Honestly, because honestly, you have to look at it like that, right? You have to be honest. And so it was, it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, you want control, but what do you really have, right? Like at the end of the day, you're not
controlling what?
Right. So I was like, this isn't sustainable, right? And so, with Cleaning Network, it gave us an opportunity to, I was able where, he has his strengths, they complement my weaknesses and vice versa, right? And so, it just helped us to really form, a company that we made sure the foundation was set, we've nurtured it every step of the way. But it has given me peace of mind because I haven't had to carry the whole weight of it, right? And I also had someone who had already been successful, creating his own business. So I could learn under his feet. I just sat and watched, I did it with ESS. It worked for me there. And so it gave us an opportunity to come together in a way that, it's been like a life-changing opportunity for me.
And speaking of strengths, like what would you say your strengths are now and how were you able to identify them?
Yeah. So I think that for me, being able to build relationships is a key strength of mine. I also think that where I've been able to excel is understanding business in a way and being able to speak that language, right? So working in an environment where you're engaging with corporations, right? And their focus is on, a lot of times it's around money. Right?
Yeah, that's me.
Right. That's, take all the other stuff out. They can like me all they want, but at the end of the day, it has to make financial sense. And so learning that language and learning how to, package, our services, or now package our services and and Cleaning Network in a way that they understand the value that's behind it and then feel comfortable making that investment, right? That's a strength. That's a strength, right? To be able to communicate in a way that gets them, comfortable with investing. Whether it's, through a cleaning contract with us or whether it's, signing up to become a member of Cleaning Network. So, that's certainly, two strengths that I think I have that have helped me to excel, in different endeavors.
And would you say your mentors, people around you, or how are you able to self-diagnose that? And the reason why I ask, because there's so many people that, may be listening right now that even they're high achievers or some low achievers, whatever, that if you ask them what their strengths were, it's hard for them to tell. So what are some strategies that you've used, that allowed you to realize your value? Because value is a big word, and when you don't realize your value, you can be the same skill set, same talent,
right,
and get different results from somebody that has a similar thing because they know what their value is.
Right.
Specifically when we're talking about doing everybody want to get these corporate deals, B2B, B2B. They're like, well, B2B, if you don't know your value, you can't communicate. If they can't understand what your value is to them,
that's right,
you'll never win.
That's right.
So how can people self-assess?
Yeah. Well, for me, the benefit was I was in business development, and business development is, if you're good based on the results you're getting, right? And that if you can get someone to sign off on giving you $1 million contract plus, right? Then there's something that you're doing right to build credibility, to build trust.
Find the wins first. Find the breadcrumbs of wins.
Absolutely. And so for me, it was easier to identify, okay, I'm actually good at this. Because I had the results of growing a business and seeing those contracts coming in, and it said, okay, you may have something there, right? But then on the other side, it also helped to expose where, I may be weak in some areas. And so it gave me a full perspective, or an assessment of where I was, right? But I think ultimately, if I weren't in business development, I would be looking at, I'm a big person of like sitting and self-assessing. Right. And being really clear about, who you know yourself to be, right? And figuring out what environment you're going to thrive in, right? And also what environment's going to allow you to be challenged in some ways too, because I think that's key is, you know, you don't want to get comfortable, right? So finding those things that are going to take you outside of your comfort zone. And then as you assess, you start picking up little clues like, okay, I'm really good at this. I'm not so good at this, you know, but I think we just have to spend time with ourselves, right? And really ask ourselves those tough questions to really determine where our strengths and weaknesses are, because they're going to change, right? Things that, you know, I was weak in 2012 when I started with ESS, I'm stronger in now. And things that I was strong in, you know, I've had to tone down a little bit, right?
Because the new level, what you think you're strong at marketing, but then it's like, hold up. I'm great at marketing now, but you put me at BT or USA Network.
There you go.
I'm not great because it's a whole different ball game.
There you go. There you go.
And now you have to continue to learn. So as you've grown in business, like, hold up, I'm strong in kindergarten, but now I'm in first grade.
Right.
And it's bigger people.
And so you can't hold on to those strengths and weaknesses so tightly that you can't evolve, right? Because you have to evolve. And that's the biggest thing is I said, you know, I'm driven, you know, I'm a driven person and I can say all these things that I feel like are my strengths, right? But then at the end of the day, I had to learn how to be flexible too, because things were changing. And as I was starting to advance in my career, it required a different version of me, right? And I had to be able to hear it from people who I trusted saying, Ciara, you need to work on this, you know, and be open to it. People closest to me said, you know, you need to work on this, you need to work on that. And so I had to take that in as someone that, you know, your pride can get in the way and you can, you know, I know myself and I'm, you know, and I had to like, you know, you have that battle, but at the end of the day, I knew, okay, to get to that next level, I have to rise with it, right? And make sure that, you know, my mind is where it needs to be, right? To be able to show up authentically and actually be effective in that too, right? So, it definitely was, you know, you're growing into each level. But for me, I became a lot more vulnerable to change and saying, okay, I may not have it all figured out. Yeah. I may have to look at myself and say, is this really, you know, where I'm strong in? Is this really, you know, so I had to really be open to, you know, the self-assessment constantly.
So now let's pivot. Let's start tactical business strategy. And one thing we talked about, it's crazy. I think we've already had a mini podcast before. Yeah. Let's talk about Jack Welch. And I know you gain a lot of things. So can you kind of explain what your role is in being, was it a university? Is it a program?
Yeah. So,
and then also too, on the back end of that, so we can just go ahead, you just take us there. The top 3 things you learned from that program.
Yeah. So, Jack Welch created a executive MBA program. Yep. In partnership with Strayer. So, you know, back in 2015 rather, I was, you know, looking for that next thing and I'm like, you know, this will probably be a good time to go back to school. Again, I was in that period of assessment. I know where I'm weak in and I know where I'm strong in. Let me go to school to kind of balance it out, right? And so what I was looking for was a different perspective on business, right? And I knew Jack Welch would probably be able to offer that, right? So, explored the program, said, okay, we're going to move forward with it. And over those, you know, 2.5 years, what it allowed me to do is learn, you know, under instructors that have been in business successfully that now, you know, have retired and they're teaching and they're giving away and they're telling you, you know, this is how, you know, I ran this company and here, you know, here's some things that you should, and it was just, you know, and even some of the guest, you know, speakers, you know, are, you know, CEOs of Fortune 100 and 500 corporations that are coming to, you know, to help us learn what they're doing in their day-to-day business, right? In a way that just, it was powerful. It was powerful to see. And so, you know, in that time, I just absorbed everything that I could from it. Every instructor, you know, I'm pulling bits and pieces from them, right? And I'm putting them aside. Like, okay, you know, this is all going to come together, right? When I finish, I'm going to understand the bigger picture of how to apply it. And so, you know, I finished the program, graduated in 2018. And, you know, what I appreciated most about it and the things that I learned, you know, Jack Welch was totally different than me in business. Yeah. You know, very cut and dry, you know, very performance based, right? Yeah. And so I had to learn, you know, where I may be emotional in some areas. you know, he taught me how to be a little bit more stern, right? In a way that doesn't come off, you know, condescending or offensive to people, but in a way that allows things to get done. And it allows people to give you a certain level of respect, right? That you don't often get when you wear your emotions on your shoulders, right? So I had to step back, and that definitely was a lesson. The other thing was just, you know, it's important to know your numbers, right? So, you know, my degree was in English, right? Okay. That was part, you know, in part because I hated math, right? I didn't like the numbers. And so, you know, having to take financial management, 1, 2, you know, all these, I had to understand, you know, what is a balance sheet, right? You know, understand, you know, the nuances of how to manage your finances and cash flow and all of these things. And so, you know, I learned that. I learned that, you know, through that program. And it helped me later on to be able to, you know, put it to work within the business, right? And then the third thing I think is just, you know, being authentic with who you are as a leader. Right? Because, you know, Jack was very clear. This is who I am. You know, this is, you know, understanding the vision, you know, behind what he did with GE, the culture, you know, he was clear and he never wavered in it. Right. And so, I think for me, it was like, okay, I need to understand, you know, big picture, you know, what's the vision for me and how do I show up as a leader? And, you know, am I able to communicate that in a way that people can buy into it? Right. And give me opportunities to continue to grow and whatnot. So it allowed me to be a little bit more firm and clear on, you know, who I am, you know, how I'm going to show up in the workplace, right? And then how am I going to show up as a leader, and really be more authentic all the way around. So, yeah.
So let's make a quick pivot to, no, we're not. Business development, because I think that is a skill set in itself that is very, because entrepreneurs a lot of times start off with an idea. Right. They build a skill, etc. But it all comes to a halt where how can you bring in revenue? Yeah. Like at the end of the day, how can you make this a business? That's right. Instead of a hobby. Right. Or just a talent. Right. So, we could probably have a podcast for years about it, but what are some core things, maybe some books or some resources for those that honestly have talent, they got ability, but don't really know how to develop business and bring revenue to actually actualize their dreams and goals financially. Right. Right. I think it's key that, you know, you have to understand your value proposition, right? And be very clear about that, because that's what people are gonna, you know, that's what people buy into is really, you know, it may be a great product or service, but how does it benefit me? Because if it doesn't benefit me, I'm not going to pay for it, right? And so I think where we miss it oftentimes is we're not clear about, you know, what our value proposition is, but then the other piece, and I think this is more important, who is our ideal client, right? Being very clear about that, because that's going to help you determine, you know, what organizations do you need to be a part of? You know, what networking events do you need to go to, right? Because if your ideal clients aren't there, then is it really going to produce the results that you're looking for, right? And so being very clear about that ideal client, and then understanding the value propositions that you offer, and not just stuff. I always say, you know, people say like, you know, we offer quality service. Everybody says that, right? Like everybody, Greg, you know, everybody says we offer quality service. Like that's the go-to, right? So really, like, let's be clear about what differentiates your company from all other companies, right? And so helping, you know, companies understand that, right? That you've got to, they hear, when you're thinking about people who are in procurement, you know, the people who are responsible for spending the dollars, you know, of these Fortune 100, 500, or even government agencies, right? They are responsible for a lot of resources for that organization, right? But they're also engaging with hundreds and thousands of, you know, vendors, right? So they're hearing the same stuff over and over and over again. So it really takes, you know, my strategy has always been, let me understand my ideal client and let me get clear about where they're trying to go and their strategic goals and objectives, what you can do through reading annual reports. You don't have to read the whole 500-page document, right? But be strategic, right? To find what you need. And then I would have, okay, here are the 4 things that they're trying to accomplish. How do I align my company to be a strategic partner to help them achieve it? Right? Because that's really what it is. If you focus on, it's kind of simple if you think about it.
It is. It takes time. up front to get clear about where they're trying to go. You know, you can listen in on earnings calls, like get that involved in it so that you can speak, you know, articulately about how they, you know, where they're trying to go. And then you can say, here's how I can help you do it. It's a totally different conversation, right? When I was able to do that and I was that crystal clear, then the opportunity started coming in and I had, you know, better success in adding those individuals as clients because I was clear about what we were going to do to be a strategic partner in helping them achieve their goals, right? That was the difference versus, you know, we sell cleaning services, right? And we're going to offer you great service. It just doesn't work. It wouldn't work, right? Because everybody's saying, last one of my competitors are saying that, right? And so I had to figure out something different.
I'm a good dude. I'm a good woman. You know, is that enough to marry?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, your wife was like, yeah, I'm just I'm a good quality person. Well, everybody, if you let them tell it, everybody quality.
That's it. So, you know, you've got to go deeper. And I think, you know, entrepreneurs, if you have a good product and service and you believe in it, you assume that everybody else has that same passion, right? And buy-in into what you're doing. And that's not often the case, right? You really have to take ownership of understanding how your product or service is going to add value to that company. That's your responsibility. And you can't go in asking, you know, them how they see it working, right? Because I've seen it happen where people go in and it's like they're questioning, you know, that buyer and that procurement, like, why should I do business with your company? And it's like, wait, like, that's not how it goes. It doesn't work like that, you know? So we've got some education that's needed in that. And especially now, I think it's critical that we start to really look at our businesses, how we structure our businesses, you know, from finances to HR to, I mean, all the things, because it's not enough just to have a business plan. Like, you really have to make sure you're structuring your business in a way that you can even be prepared to take on those contracts, right? Because if you do get one and you're not prepared, it could sink your whole business. So that's the reality that I think we don't want to really address, but it's going to be critical for us to actually have businesses that are sustainable long term.
You jump in that B2B market and it sounds good in theory,
right?
But if you're not prepared or know how you're framing your contracts or anything of that nature, it can get real dicey.
Oh, it can.
Legally, just ethically, it all can be. Cause the numbers, and then also too, financially, it can look good on paper.
Right.
But then, cause you promise and stuff, you see, 100 grand, 150, let's run it up. But then it's like, oh, you promised 15 shoots, and these 15 shoots, and the X, Y, and Z, you start looking at the numbers like, bro, what? My takeaway. And that has to be the worst thing. You locked into a 2-year contract, and on paper it said 150 grand. You like, yo, lit. And then you like, your takeaway 20 grand. And you down there 2 years, you have to fill that contract. You sit here like,
absolutely.
You hurt. You delivering like.
And you didn't think about taxes and you didn't think about, you know, and so that 20,000 is even less because, you know, now you've got to pay taxes on it, you know, and so we miss that stuff. And that is why, you know, our businesses have trouble, you know, long term because we don't often have the mentorship to tell us, you know, here's what you need to do. There's resources out there, absolutely. But I think it's better when, you know, when you have someone, that looks like you or at least is in a position that you want to be in to tell you these are the things you need to do in a way that, you know, you feel supported versus, you know, feeling like someone's critiquing you. But I definitely think that's a key piece that we're missing, and it influences our businesses greatly in the back end because we can't sustain a pandemic because we didn't have the, you know, so the data is already showing, you know, in these, you know, in these business communities that we, you know, we were already at risk before the pandemic. The pandemic just took us under, right? But why? Because it didn't happen to other businesses that, you know, that we're seeing that are thriving through it. So how do we make sure that we structure our businesses like that Fortune 100 or 500 corporation? Even if we're just a small mom and pop, you can't structure it in a way to be that $1 billion, $1 million company. But it takes the time and it takes the dedication to do that.
So let's pivot to personally, man, because I know you just took on a role for diversity and inclusion, and being a part of that space is really it's an interesting place to be in, because honestly, there's a lot of companies that for the longest have just they've had people in D&I roles and they have diversity and inclusion initiatives, but you in the company is the most racist, toxic companies for Black people, for people that identify as gay or trans, etc. And it's like, how public facing is all good, but it's really just terrible. So can you speak from a personal level, but also too, now you have a leadership role in said institution where now you can kind of dictate that policy. So what is it? How do you attack that where for so long people been sleeping at the wheel?
Right.
It's like you come in the room and there's nobody in the wheel. It's like, yo, we got the D&I, no budget, no team, no nothing. Right. And yo, we stand by D&I. Well, well, marketing and sales, you got 10,000 sales reps. Right. D&I got one person.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that is the reality that some companies do it because, it looks good, right? Some companies do it because it's really a part of their core values. I'm fortunate that with the company that I work with, it is a part of the core values, right? And I was able to, over the 8 years that I've been a part of the companies, to really understand that and to advocate for it even more because, we're a minority-owned company, right? Environmental Services is a minority-owned company. We're already in that circle. And, we were working with the corporations. We were doing all this stuff, but it was time to take it to another level, right? It was time for us to look at it, from a different point of view. Now we're in a position where we can extend opportunities to small and diverse businesses. We're in a position where we have to look at our workforce and say, how diverse is our workforce, right? And those, that's both our companies combined, right? So, environmental service systems and diversified maintenance, right? So we're in a position now where we're bringing two sister companies together. Yeah. And we're saying, okay, here, diversity and inclusion has been a part of our values, but we want to amplify that now, right? And we want to put real strategy behind it, make the investment in it, and go out and, into the world and say, hey, here we are and here's what we believe and we're going to back it by action, right? That's not always the case. So, for me, of course, being, Black, being a woman, being a part of the LGBT community, right? I checked all of the boxes for the diversity, right? Like, other than being a veteran, I'm not, so some of those things, not so much, but I checked enough to be able to give a perspective, right? And so as I was advancing in my career, I was always looking for, I was looking for the diversity, right? I was looking for it and you almost soak it up when you see it, but then when you don't see it, it's like, okay, well then I have to become it, right? And so, growing up in my career and not seeing as much diversity, I took ownership of being the person, right? Yeah. And so everywhere I went, my thought process was like, be an example, let people see the fruit, right? So
of diversity. Right. Cause and especially, you're dealing with, lack of a better word, you're dealing with European folk. It's a numbers game. It's a metrics game. And unfortunately, you got to quantify, even though we've been quantifying for our entire existence in the United States, our value, but in the corporate, you got to quantify. So what's in it for me with diversity and inclusion? Like, how can I win? Right. But if you think about it, you have people from different mindsets. Of course, you're going to win. A different walks in like they're going to see things differently. Absolutely. But for some reason, these smart people, the society is deemed as smart, don't see that, which I never could still understand that. Yeah. But yeah, how can we, unfortunately, but it's the nature of the game, in reality, how can we showcase the value that add in the diversity? And for you, specifically the companies you've been a part of, can you share what diversity has done actually tangibly for companies? Yeah.
Well, I think, the key is, I think, for people to understand the value, we have to own our own diversity. So I think in a lot of, especially in a corporate environment, we code switch a lot, right? And so there's not a comfort in being our authentic selves. And so people don't see the diversity and they don't embrace it and they don't make the correlation because we try to fit in with, with them, right? And so I think there's an opportunity for us to be more authentic and say, okay, here's who I am. When I first started, with environmental service systems, I was nervous about, saying, okay, I am in a same-sex relationship, right? And, I remember when I was going through the onboarding process and I was looking at the benefits and they didn't have benefits for same-sex couples. And I'm like, oh man, like how, and I was, I had this tug of war with, do I say something? Do I not say something? And I finally, I did. I said, it's important that I say something because it could just be, I'm the only one. They don't know, it could be that, it could be. And so, we had the conversation. They made the accommodation to, have the policies.
And we never think, you never think about that. Like, hold up.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you don't. And so it was an educational moment and that was for everybody. Right. And it was okay because that, I could say, well, why don't, every company should have that, but some just don't know. Yeah. Right. Some are slow to evolve.
Yeah. We can't cancel it before we try to cancel stuff so fast. Like, yo, I don't know, bro. Like, yeah. And I wish we would have more empathy on that because we say, even myself, I may say certain things and just happiness is like, yo, G, that's a little off.
Yeah.
Well, G, I instead of being like, yo, G, nah, bro, G, you're misogynistic, you're X, Y, Z. And I'm like, bro, I didn't know. Yeah,
you've got it. And so there's some, because I think people who have been oppressed in society, they are, you get offensive, right? And you get defensive because you're like, wait a minute, like it's hard for us when we have our guards up to accept that people just may not know because we're so accustomed to people knowing and then just being negative, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there was an opportunity for me. That lesson was, okay, they didn't know. So now I'm here. Now how do I make, my involvement with these organizations impactful? And the critical piece was I had to be authentic. So, it was funny. ESS, I had the long hair, I wore the dress, I had the makeup, very quickly thereafter, I look like I look now, right? And it was a big thing, like, what are people going to think? How are people going to, but it was so important that, like, I'm authentic because they had to see me being all of what Ciara is to really be able to embrace me. And I needed them to see all of that to know that this was my safe place, right?
And so. You like short hair?
I do.
Is that your preference?
Yeah. So,
I've never seen you with long hair.
Yeah, nobody has. So you have to go back to like,
Lizzie.
You gotta go back on Facebook, like 2012. You'll see some pictures with me with long hair. People don't believe it now, right? Because it's so, but I remember like over a weekend, cut my hair, changed all, all my wardrobe out, came to work on Monday looking like a totally different person, right? And it's funny, I've got a badge. I'll send it to you. I've got my first badge with like the long hair, the blouse, the makeup and everything. And then you see my badge now is totally different, right? But it was an evolution. Yeah. But I had a safe place to do it, right? I know that not everybody has that, but my role and my purpose in this is to create those safe spaces in corporate environments, where companies need an advocate internally to help educate them on what they should and should not do, right? And so if we step in these D&I roles with that understanding that, we can help kind of be the compass here, right? Then we can help these companies along and we can create safe spaces so that everyone can flourish in these environments and they don't have to be concerned about, do I have to hide this? Do I have to, so that's that's my approach to D&I is, understanding everyone's perspective. It's not a one size fits all in this, right? It's really being clear about what everyone brings to the table. Right. And then also making sure that we have a table that seats everybody and not just seats them, but that allows them to have input in, in the direction that we're going as a company. Right. That's key. And so, I'm very fortunate that I was given this opportunity to do it. I was advocating for it for years. I knew I wanted to be in this diversity space. I just didn't know, how to make it work. But, the opportunity presented itself. And because, going back to my business development days, I had to attach a business case to it, right? That's the thing. And that's, some people say it's just the right thing to do. It is. But in a business setting, there has to be a business case. We just have to deal with the reality. There has to be a business case to it. It has to make sense, right? And so I was able to go in and say, okay, we know diversity is going to allow us to be more competitive because we're going to get, diverse perspectives. We're going to have people at the table that are going to offer us new ideas that are going to help us be more efficient and more effective.
And new connections.
Right? And new connections, right? We know that, our clients have an expectation that we're going to have a commitment to diversity. We're going to share that commitment that they have, right? So our workforce needs to look like that, right? It needs to look like we have diverse, not just in our, in our cleaning positions, but we have diversity in our leadership as well, right?
Because a lot of companies get off for, Amazon, we have our data, but hold up, that's for your people working.
Right.
Look at that. It's 0.8%.
Right. Yeah. So
data elite. You can't see that data.
Absolutely. You've got to look at it. So, that's what we're doing. We're, making sure our workforce, is diverse at all levels, right? We're integrating, new partners in the company, to allow us to, build relationships with those organizations that are working with these diverse communities, right? Whether it's chambers of commerce, whether, whatever, HBCUs, we're just trying to build these relationships now so we can get access, to that network and say, hey, we're here and we're intentional about what we're doing, right? It's not a, checking a box scenario. our company really believes this, and we're intentional about creating a safe space for you to flourish, right? And then on the other side, you know, we're creating a supplier diversity program. So we're going to bring diverse suppliers into our supply chain. We're going to spend money with them, right? We're going to help them create jobs. We're going to help them, you know, to be able to sustain, you know, through a pandemic and whatever else happens, right? So there's some opportunities for us to now pay it forward, whereas we've been able to grow with corporations that have supplier diversity programs.
Yeah.
And, you know,
like NBA weekend. I remember NBA All-Star weekend.
Yeah. You know, NBA and, you know, all these companies we've been fortunate to work with. Now we're going to turn it back and say, okay, let's pay it forward. Right. And so there's, you know, it's an exciting time, but at the root of it all is intentionality, right? It's passion, it's understanding that, it is something that as a company, you know, we need to do. And we need to own it. You know, everyone has a stake of ownership in D&I. It's not just Ciara leading the charge. Everyone has a stake of ownership in this for it to really be successful. And so, you know, I've been fortunate to be able to travel around, meet the team, engage, you know, I call it like a little mini listening tour, you know, to get familiar with our staff and just have real conversations and then take it back and be intentional about, you know, putting strategies behind it that are going to help us be better and help our employees, you know, have opportunities to advance in their career. And, you know, and then also with our company, our customers to be able to go back and say, hey, now we have our own diversity program. And we're intentional about it. We're going to have the data to support it because we're going to measure ourselves, right? We're not just going to have a program. We're going to have data to support it, right? And so how does that look? How does that strengthen our relationships with our current clients, right? It shows that we are putting an investment behind, you know, diversity and inclusion just as they are. And we're going to support it by the data that's going to help them as they're looking at their diversity spend. That, you know, it creates this win-win for all involved.
Yeah. And that's the whole game. So, in regards to that, because as we begin to close, one question I always make sure I ask everybody is, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
You know, at the core of it all, I would hope that people would say that I was always there to help. You know, that's it. No matter what I've done in life, I think the core thing is that I'm always the person that says I'll help however I can. You know, I really want people to know that never changed. If anything, I hope that as I continue to grow in my career, that I'm able to do even more, right? Yeah. I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we, you know, increase our giving? How do we make sure that we're more involved in the community? How do we make sure that, you know, that if people are reaching out for help on something that I used to do, that I still can, you know, be of service to them or at least connect them to resources. So it's just, you know, I want people to know that I was always willing to help in some capacity. And that, you know, I lived an authentic life. You know, I didn't compromise on integrity, my morals. You know, I kept all of that intact. Even in, you know, an environment where you're working full time, then you have your entrepreneurial venture. I kept, you know, no conflicts of interest. Like integrity was like the key piece. And so I'd hope that people see that as being, you know, a part of the ingredients that made me who I was and how I showed up in the world.
So now we're going to go to our rapid fire round, 5 rapid fire questions. Rapid fire answer. Ready to go?
Let's do it.
What's the best piece of advice that you have never received?
That's a good question. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to slow down.
I like that.
Yeah, it's okay to slow
Cooking
down.
that real quick, just cause I think that's, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it's hard, but I think when you go, one of the things, if I had to look back over my life, I started working at 14 and a half, right? Yeah. If I had to look back at it, I would say I was never fully in a moment. Right. Because I was always like, you accomplish this, on to the next, right? And so I never, you know, I'm just now getting to a place, and it's a struggle that I just sit for a while and say, okay, I'm good. And if I don't do something every single day, it's going to be okay. Right? Like I don't have to do something every single day. I can have a day of rest where I don't do anything. Right? That's what I mean by it's okay to slow down. Like, you know, whatever my lot is, whatever God has for me, I'm going to get to it eventually. Yeah. And it may not be all, you know, if I had it my way, I'd like to be a millionaire, I would have liked to be a millionaire several years ago.
Yeah.
Right. I'll get there. I'll get to where I want to be financially. I'll get to where I want to be emotionally and everything else, but it's all in due time.
Yeah.
And that piece, like being okay with due time, the appointed time, however we want to put, being okay with that. Yeah. That's a struggle. But it's okay to slow down because I don't want to speed through life and not really experience it, right?
Do all this stuff in the NW 70, 80. Like I did all this stuff, but I never even like, I didn't get a chance to feel it.
That's it.
And it's still important because the legacy, the stuff you done is going to live on, but then like, I want to enjoy it too.
Right.
You feel me? Like we living life for ourselves too, like to a certain extent.
Right. That's right.
So if you could take away one habit or add one habit, take away a habit and add one habit, what would they be?
Oh gosh, take away a habit. So a habit that I would take away would be, so I need to be on a schedule with sleep. So, I've now started to adopt a late night working, schedule. I would take that habit away. I would put in, waking up earlier. So
what time do you wake up now?
So usually I'm up about 6:30. I'd like to be up about 5. That's the threshold.
But when do you go to sleep?
I'm usually in bed by like midnight, 1, the latest. So, when you look at the amount of hours I'm sleeping, it's not sustainable long term. But beyond that, I would like to, when I was working out, I'd work out at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I had to schedule.
Yeah, you was going hard in the gym. You was going crazy.
I was going hard. And now with the, the pandemic, it's changed things a little bit, right? And I have, it's sad because I have the little Peloton bike and, and I'm sitting, and I can't get myself up to go downstairs to ride the Peloton bike, but I can get myself up to go drive to meet with somebody, but that's a whole nother thing. So a habit would be get up and, and make sure that I prioritize myself first before I start my day, which would be,
I'll be up and I'm getting to it.
Yeah.
But I understand though, I'm realistic. I'm self-aware it's the season.
Right.
It can't be like, if it's like this forever, I won't live that long.
Right.
Like that's not, or I will live long, it's going to be a bad life. It's going to be, I'm going to get the Hillary Clinton syndrome.
Yeah.
Cause they work, I read books, they 4 or 5 hours sleep, but they look like they got 4 or 5. I said it, sorry, Hillary, you and Bill. Bill too, you can get it too. Y'all look like that.
Yeah.
The decisions y'all make with funds, y'all kind of all move like that too, but I ain't going there.
Right.
Like, you feel me?
Yeah, but you got to think about now, I'm 33, so, when I came into 33, it was like, this is my Jesus year, I'm gonna go hard, and then I'm like, yeah, but at what cost? That's the question I ask myself a lot. At what cost now? Because, I'll be 40, and like you're just being honest. And so it's like, I have to think about the long-term game here. I'll get to where I want to go, no doubt. I have no doubt everything I want to accomplish, I'm going to accomplish, but it doesn't have to be today. And it doesn't have to be tomorrow. Like it can happen. Right. And so I have to take the control, the reins and kind of just relax my hold on them and just let, God move in the way that he wants to move instead of me trying to force how it all comes together. That's, That's
we want to fast forward time, but not fast forward our character.
There you go.
It's like we want to fast, but like your character got to grow too.
There you go.
And doesn't mean you're a bad person. You can be a good person, but still character can still grow.
Oh God, if I had for what has manifested right now, if that had happened to me, when I wanted it to, 8 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to sustain this. I wouldn't have been able to maintain what is necessary to keep this afloat, right? Because I wasn't ready. Emotionally, I wasn't ready. I just wasn't there. Mentally, I wasn't there. And so now I can say, all right, I get it. I get why you have to have the preparation before you get, the manifestation of what it is that you desire.
It can be, we've seen it. We've seen it in culture. People get a lot of money early or get a lot of influence and power early and they go crazy. And we love to laugh at them, but it really wasn't their fault. They got sped up.
That's it.
And then cause you would have gave me $1 million at 18. Oh, we would have been, actually, I wouldn't have been reckless, but I would have been reckless. Like, I wouldn't, so I get it. And the last question of this is, if you were the president of the United States, what's the first thing you would do?
Oh my goodness. I think I would disperse resources, financial, educational resources into, underprivileged communities. I think that's key because, we talk about affordable housing. We talk about all these things. Yeah, they're all critical things. But I think, too many people are being left behind at the most basic level. And there's certain things that we could equip them with that would help them, pull themselves out of those situations that they're in. So I would make that a priority. I think we've got to reach back, help people who we've forgotten or that we've said don't have value in this society and give them the resources that'll help them be successful.
And everybody as a culture change agent that's ever been on this show, and it's the last question of the podcast as we close. It's been a really rapid, I didn't realize how much time has flown, but we've been rapping. It's been like a racquetball. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, yo.
Good time.
Yeah, it's been a good time. Wonderful time to be alive. So, the question is, if we could change one thing about society, most specifically the African American culture, in your opinion, what would it be and why?
First thing that comes to mind, I would want us to own our greatness. Own it, to not put our greatness in someone else's hands or put the control of, how we move in this society in someone else's hands. I would want us to take ownership of our own greatness, our own power, and then disperse it out so that people understand, it's powerful to be Black. No matter what the narrative is, what you're hearing, it's powerful to be Black, right? It's powerful to be any diverse classification at this point, but we've got to understand that we have power. We do have greatness. We do have the ability to, be self-sufficient, to live the lives of our dreams, right? I think we just need to boost, our culture up in a way, that will allow us to reconnect to what I think our ancestors were very clear about, our resiliency, our power, our greatness, reconnect to that and then live, as connected to that as possible, right? That we can just really thrive off of it. I think it would give us a battery boost as a culture, but I would hope that, that's the piece that I think we're missing. It's just that we've given control where control shouldn't have been given. And we almost became comfortable, with, being oppressed, right? It was an expectation that it's just going to, that this is just what it is to be Black in America or, any, underprivileged group. I think we have to go back and take the power back, take the greatness back and teach it to our youth so that they can do things differently.
So on that note, where can people find more information about the work you do and keep in contact or reach out, et cetera?
Yeah. So, for Cleaning Network is cleaningnetworkworldwide.com. So that's the website. It has all the information for those that want to join, whether you're a cleaning professional or cleaning company. If you have interest in connecting with me personally, of course, I'm on Facebook, Ciara Lilly. You can find me pretty easily. Not so much on Twitter, but LinkedIn, same thing, Ciara Lilly. Instagram, same, Ciara Lilly. And then for Diversified ESS, if that's something that's of interest to folks, Environmental Service Systems website, environmentalss.com, Diversified Maintenance, diversifiedm.com. So, all of those platforms you'll find me as well. But certainly those are the main ways to connect with me.
So Minority Trailblazer Nation, make sure. One, we want to say, before you make sure anything, we want to say thank you for giving us well over our time, opening up the space. I mean, it's been a journey.
Yes.
But it was a phenomenal show, which I knew it was going to be. I'm excited to put it out in the atmosphere, and I'm excited to keep building and growing because there's certain things I've always, certain areas specifically in the minority, on business space that you're ace at. And I know there's some things that we've been leveling up on one end, but there's some areas, some gaps that we know we need to fill. So we definitely look forward to working with you and things of that nature. And NCB, man, show it a love, man. As always, make sure you do two things only. One, leave a review, 5-star. If it's not a 5-star, don't leave it. Just leave. I don't care. If it's not 5-star, I'm not really on it. Right. And then number 2, make sure you changing the freaking culture. Good night.